Eventually, and again, get the book. He's leaving Mukden. I was on the last truck out, and as we pulled away, I saw the Russians come out of the front gate with the Japanese and walk on the outside of the brick wall toward the back of the camp. My impression was that they were going to line the Japanese up against a back brick wall and shoot them. Check. I'm supporting the Russians in this one, I think. Back to the book. They end up in the port in China, where they're going to get their ride home on a ship. There was an American transport waiting for us at the dock, but when the ship captain saw all of us armed with rifles and sabers, he would not let us on the ship unless we gave up our weapons. We said, "No way, Captain, these are ours and we're not going to part with them." He then said that he would safely store them for us and they would be returned when we docked. Our reply was an emphatic no. By now we were looking for a place to sack out because we were not going to board that ship without our arms. Well, after a lengthy delay, the captain relented and we were finally allowed on the ship with our sabers clanking at our sides. He talks about they go through great efforts to get these Japanese sabers. Once on the ship, we were given a cursory medical check, deloused and given clean clothes, I believe, before being taken to our living quarters. Our dispute with the captain of the ship was over now, and everyone could relax in clean quarters on a very comfortable bed. This was the first real mattress that I'd slept on since leaving the SS Coolidge almost 4 years ago. It felt great, and the food provided was also very good. Now our minds and bodies were truly at ease. No mattress for... You know when you gotta like sleep in the airport or whatever, and you complain about it?
Sure.
That's a carpet. That's actually a pretty good deal. And you've got a sweatshirt that you've wrapped up in and you put a little something under your head.
A bathroom too, by the way.
Yeah, there's a nice bathroom, right? There's not lice digging into your skin or fleas eating at your...
Yeah, no.
4 years. 4 years on the dirt. So now they sail from there to Okinawa. Once they're in Okinawa, they're doing a little bit of port time in Okinawa, getting some supplies. We're soon told that a strong typhoon was headed our way, and the safest place for us was in the open water instead of the shallow bay. Before long, the island of Okinawa disappeared in the distance, and night wasn't long in coming. So there's a big typhoon coming. They get back on board this ship. They head out to sea. I must have fallen asleep eventually because about 4 o'clock in the morning I was awakened when the ship was rocked by a tremendous explosion. I could not imagine what it was because it was a lot worse by far than an exploding depth charge. Before I got completely dressed, I could hear sailors working their way down toward us, shouting, "Everyone topside, everybody topside," and prepare to abandon ship. Everybody topside, hurry, hurry, hurry. And he goes through some of the details. We had hit a mine, which tore a hole in the side of our ship and flooded the engine room and in turn knocked out our power. There was a possibility that this ship might sink, which is why we were all ordered topside and given life preservers. We had to be ready to abandon ship if needed. Even if we abandoned ship, I doubt many of us would have survived. It was still dark, and on top of that, there was no possible way to lower the lifeboats with the ship lurching back and forth as it was. Once on deck, we had to tie ourselves to something to keep from getting thrown off. At least that is what I did. I found a place where I could sit down and also tie myself with the straps of my life preserver. By now, everyone was wet from the driving rain, and the wind whistled and howled. I thought to myself, is our misery ever going to end? When daylight came, I sort of wished it hadn't. What I saw was enough to scare a person to death. We were adrift in violent seas with 50-foot waves. You had to look almost straight up to see their crests when they came rolling toward you. They were much higher than the ship, especially when the ship was in a trough. So they had hit this mine. Yeah. The engine room was flooded. They're still 200 miles from Okinawa. So this is... The captain comes on and is like confident, like, don't worry, we're only 200 miles from Okinawa. And he says to himself, hey, I can't swim 200 miles. I don't know about you, Captain. Back to the book. Besides severely damaging the ship, the exploding mine was responsible for the deaths of about 10 ex-prisoners and several sailors that were in the engine room. The ex-prisoners were on the deck when the mine went off. The explosion slung landing ladders that were hanging on the side of the ship up and over the railing like lethal whips. These men were apparently killed instantly. These were the same ladders that we had used to board the ship just a few days earlier. I felt depressed, and I'm sure that the other men felt the same. These were men who were on their way home after their terribly long and hard ordeal, and now they were dead. To get this far and still not make it was unbelievable. The Japs finally got them after all with their floating mine. I couldn't help but think of the poor parents and families back home. They had been notified that their son or husband or brother was on his way home, and you can imagine the joy that they felt. Now they had to be notified that they had been killed on the way home. Yeah. They eventually go from Okinawa to Manila, and then from Manila they're waiting for a ship to go back to the States. One day I finally saw my name on a list pinned to a bulletin board as I was leaving, as one leaving by ship for the States on such and such a date. Before long, and he gets on the ship. Before long, the last of the tropical islands disappeared in the distance. We were now well out in the open ocean. There was nothing to do but eat, sleep, and read, and this would go on for several weeks. My body tingled in the dark when I thought about what the future might bring. Sitting out on the deck with a cool breeze blowing and the ship gently rocking made me feel a little guilty for having it so good.